Hi, my name is Katie Chambers and I'm an editor. I started out in nonfiction editing and then about 3 years ago I got trained in fiction editing and I love it. I edit young adult fantasy and supernatural, and then I also edit young adult and adult thriller, mystery, dystopian, and then middle grade fiction and chapter books and picture books. So I love the kids books. I have kids myself. That's why I have this little tent in my office, because I've got 3 little young ones. So when they want to come in my office while I'm working, they just come in that little tent. They have some little activities that they can play to keep them busy while I'm working until I can step away. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I will say that I do have a tendency to talk fast. I'm sorry, I'm a very passionate person. So since this isn't live and you can't give me a signal to let me know when I'm talking fast, I have left time for questions. So you can type your questions throughout the presentation. I will answer them, but if you don't want to be distracted and you want to watch the presentation, you can then read them at the end, because I've left some time to where you can just kind of peruse that chat thread to catch anything that maybe if I was talking too fast and you missed it, you can ask a question about that, or if you wanted to learn more about the topic. Please ask questions. I'd love to answer them. So I have a handout for you, which I dropped the link in the chat. So if you want to click on that link and then download the handout, you don't necessarily need to follow along with it. That's for your use afterwards. Okay, so these are 2 tools that every writer should have in their toolbox, because it really helps with showing instead of telling. It helps with characterization, enriching your characterization, offering variety, getting deeper point of view, playing around with tension. So these are tools that will really help you out. So if I'm sure you've heard of action beats. I'm sure you've heard of free and direct speech. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. And maybe you know a lot about them. Maybe you know a little bit about them. But I'm going to share what I know today. So first we're going to talk about action beats, how you create them, the purpose of them, and common mistakes to avoid. When a character does an action during a dialogue exchange, you got an action beat. Now this action beat can come before, during, or after, just like dialogue tags can. But never use a dialogue tag and an action beat. No need. I have done that. I have found myself as an editor deleting people's tags a lot of the time when they already have a beat. The beat makes it clear who's speaking, so there's no need to have the tag too. And if the beat doesn't make it clear who's speaking, then add in their name. Just don't have the tag and a beat. So you've got movement-based action beats. And this is where the character just takes movement. I know, I will. Kayla walked out the apartment. I don't know what Kayla was feeling, but I know what she did. She walked out the apartment. So that's a movement-based action beat. An emotion-based action beat is a way to know how the characters are feeling, through showing instead of telling. Maybe it's already been established how the character feels earlier in the scene, or maybe that the words themselves indicate it. But that's not always the case, so you can use a beat to show that emotion. For example, I don't care. Gary bit his lips, staring at her with a dead expression. This is revealing his emotions through showing instead of telling. To get emotion-based action beats down, you can use the emotion thesaurus. There's information about that on the handout. Or you can go people watching and see what they do with their body when they're feeling a certain emotion. Or you can do the mirror trick. Go stand in a mirror, feel a certain way, and see what you do with your body when you're feeling that way. Then there's also mixed action beats. Sorry, I didn't realize that it wasn't filming the whole screen. There we go. Mixed action beats are both movement-based and emotion-based. So if we take the movement-based one, Kayla walked out the apartment, and then we add slamming the door, then we know her emotions and the movement that she took. Okay, any questions on this so far? Okay, the purpose of beats, there's a lot of purpose of beats, and we're going to talk about them. The first one is to control rhythm and tension. It can break up long dialogue exchanges. This is often known as the talking head syndrome. When you've just got 2 characters or 3 characters, how many characters just talking for pages upon pages, and you don't have any breaks. So that's like, there's not really action going on, it's just words. And the readers kind of would need some action to break that up. So it can break up those long exchanges. The best way that they control rhythm and tension is by how many beats you use. This really affects the tension. So if you've got some dialogue that's like high tension, the characters are just, they're feeling tension. They either have a tension with each other, it can be a sexual tension, romantic tension, or anger tension. So maybe they have tension with the tension that they're feeling towards each other, or maybe both of them feel fine towards each other, but the tension is just in the scene, in the situation. So if you've got them talking dialogue here where there should be some tension there, don't use beats or limit them. You can either limit them or take them out altogether, but if you've got these beats, they drag down the tension. Like we're feeling the tension that either the characters are feeling towards each other or the tension of the situation, and then we've got all these beats that are like, oh, dragging us down. Oh, now the dialogue's high tension again, dragging us down. So you want to be careful with that. Then on the flip side, you can add in more beats to relax the tension. So if it's not a scene that is high tension dialogue, characters have high tension feelings towards each other or high tension toward a situation, and you've got a lot of beats, and you don't have a lot of beats, and it kind of creates a tension that doesn't need to be there. So you can add in more beats and more pauses to relax the tension. You can also use beats to slow down a scene. So let's say we've got 2 characters or talking, or 3, however many characters. Well, let's say 2, because you'd have tags somewhere in there if you had 3. So let's say you had 2 characters talking back and forth, and they feel tension either at a situation or at each other, and there's just all this tension, and then the next line the character says is going to be the critical line that either ups the tension, breaks the tension, reveals something that the tension has been building toward. Well, you can put in an action beat right before that critical moment of dialogue, and you can make it like a several sentences, even a paragraph long beat. So we got our readers at the edge of our seat. They're feeling the tension. They're there. But then we pause, and they're like, no, I really want to know what happens. And bam, then the character reveals it. This is much like a cliffhanger, but it's not a cliffhanger because you're just slowing down the scene, but it feels like a momentary cliffhanger because they're reading that beat and they're waiting for what the character's going to say next. Okay, the second purpose of beats, it can help establish the setting. People don't just talk in random places, right? They're located somewhere. They're not in the talking head syndrome where we are just the floating head syndrome where they're just talking, but we don't know where they are. Now, we don't always need to know all the details of every scene. That would bog down your story, and I, for one, would skip all that if every scene you had a description of the setting every time. But it is nice to know where the characters are located if that matters, and we don't necessarily want to read a long description every time. A long description is great when needed. When not needed, you can just use a beat to establish the setting. Like, Greta curled and uncurled her toes in the sand, watching as the sand pebbles flickered around. Yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong. I just think we need to slow down. Okay, I know that she's at the beach. I don't have this long, drawn out description of the sound of the waves and the feel of the sand, and because maybe I don't need that in that moment. Maybe I don't need this multi-sensory description of the setting, but I do want to know she's at the beach. Bam, beat shows you that. Next purpose of a beat is it conveys emotions, motivations, and movement. Like we talked about how you have movement-based beats and emotion-based beats. Some words can be described, like you can say them feeling a lot of different ways. So the words themselves don't reveal the motion, And if the words themselves don't reveal the character's emotion, or their emotions and their emotions and feelings have not been shown earlier in the scene or established somehow, then you can use a beat to convey that. So for example, if I were to say, I don't know, I could say, oh, I don't know, showing annoyance that they keep asking me. Or I can say, I don't know, whatever, like just casual, I don't care. I don't know, don't care. Or I can be sad. I can be sad that I don't know. I don't know, right? But we're not acting. Right there, I did a poor man's job of acting, but you could sense my emotion because I was acting it out. But we're not doing a movie. We can't see that. So the beat can help reveal how they said those words. Okay? And the examples are in the handout. You can also use beats to show that their emotions don't match up with their words. Maybe they're saying that they love a character, but they don't really love the character. They're just saying that, and you can tell by what they're doing, by the action beat that they're taking. That probably the character missed because they were just so excited to hear, I love you, that they didn't pick up on the physical nuances that counteracted that. But the reader will if you put that in a beat. And then of course some just show movement, add movement to the scene. Mistakes to avoid with beats. You want to avoid having a poor balance. It's all about balance of things. I love action beats, but too many action beats are unnecessary. Even if you're trying to slow down the tension, you don't want to have a lot, okay? You just have more to slow down the tension. If you're not using action beats for tension purposes, to decrease it or increase it, and if you are using it for that purpose, then how many beats you have is kind of dictated by that tension purpose. But if you're not, you want to make sure you have a good balance of beats, dialogue tags, and dialogue. And I included dialogue in that balance because if you have a beat or a tag after every line of dialogue, you have a poor balance. You have too little dialogue and too many beats and dialogue tags. No matter how long the dialogue is, it's still too little dialogue and too many beats and tags because they're flooding it. They're taking over it. Some editors, and maybe authors, I don't know, but I'm in the editor world, some editors say to never use dialogue tags and to always use beats because beats are better. Well, beats are better in that they convey more, they don't have the interruption of the narrator saying said, you don't have that tag that kind of can take readers out of the experience. So I guess they're better in that way. So use a beat when you can, but don't use beats just to have beats. Like if we need to know what character is speaking, because we've got 3 characters or 4 characters, and we need to know who's speaking, but they didn't take any certain action, or they're not feeling any certain emotion, or the emotion's already been established, that beat may feel unnecessary when a simple she said or he said or they said would suffice. Right? So don't just feel like, oh, I need to put in some sort of beat because tags are always bad. I will admit that when I'm editing, I often turn my author's dialogue tags into beats. I model this for the first several chapters, and then later on I might just say turn this into a beat so that they can practice. And I do this because, yeah, beats add more to the scene than a tag does. But I only do this when I clearly see, like, I can use a tag to express emotion, or I can use a tag to express some movement and we need movement. If we've already had a lot of movement, then we don't need more movement. I mean, it could be, sometimes I do simple things like, she sat down on the couch, or she walked to go get a drink of water, right? Because I'm like, well, let's turn that tag into a beat. So let's have your character, I don't know, go get a drink of water, or have your character stand up or sit down. Something simple. It's not necessarily that they had to take that action per se, but it adds movement to the scene and it takes away if you have too many tags. But if you're like, man, I really don't want the character to take any movement right now because I've already had enough movement in the scene and it's unnecessary, they don't feel any certain emotions, then a tag is fine. But yeah, I do change tags into beats and I do make up movement. Of course, the author is free to reject that and write a different one altogether. Use my examples to springboard. If they don't like the movement I created, they can use different movement. But yeah, I do that. But, you know, it's not like the movement was 100% necessary to the scene, but it just got rid of an unnecessary beat. An unnecessary tag. And overall, beats are better than tags. But again, it's okay to use tags when you just really don't want to bog down the scene with more beats. Be careful of avoiding just having commentary on the dialogue itself. Some beats that I've had my authors write sometimes literally doesn't reveal anything new. It's like very clear the words they used, what emotion they felt, or there was just an unnecessary movement that, or the movement they made literally was just showing what the words said and it wasn't needed. So like, go away, ellipses. She trailed off and waved her out. First of all, ellipses show that she trailed off. You don't need to state it when it's already shown in the dialogue. Waved her out, you might need it. Go away clearly indicates she wants her out. But, you know, you might need waved her out to indicate the character's personality in the moment, because that's really important to see that that's how upset she felt, that she totally was pushing her out or whatever. But if it's not, if it's just kind of like a casual go away, you don't really need the waved her out. And if you've got too many action beats going on, that's when you can take out because the dialogue reveals it. Okay, other mistakes to avoid. Avoid unnecessary movement. Like, readers don't need to be told every action that a character makes. Like I said, waving her out in that moment might have been an important action and movement, but if you've already got earlier movements, that dialogue made it clear that she was wanting her out. Readers do not need to be told every action a character makes. Just like I showed with the go away dialogue and the waving her out. I mean, you can add that because it's not like you can't put in things that aren't 100% necessary, but you don't necessarily need it. But the truly unnecessary movements, let's say like the phone rings and then the dialogue is, yes, what? There's no need to state that they walked to the phone and picked it up. We can figure that out, right? They clearly had to walk to the phone in order to pick it up. Unless they were sitting by the phone, but then you would have already established that. That would have need to have been established that they were just sitting there, they were waiting for the phone to ring. But otherwise, we can assume they weren't sitting right next to the phone and they had to walk up and pick it up, but no need to state it. Other mistakes. Unnecessary naming of body parts. Nodded his head, shrugged his shoulders. Well, what else did he nod? Pretty sure we're not over here nodding our elbows, nodding our fingers, shrugging our, I don't even know what else to shrug besides my shoulder, shrugging my head. Looks like a head bob. So you can drop his head and his shoulders. Too many crutches. Watch out for using the same kinds of the same beats over and over and over. The ones that I find that my authors use a lot are nodding, frowning, sighing, smiling, rolling eyes, shrugging. But you might have your own. There's certain crutch words to authors. Certain authors may have a tendency to always said they stared blankly or whatever the beat is that you tend to repeat. Know what your crutch words are and then do a find search in your manuscript to find it. So type in sighing and see how many instances of sighing you have. And more importantly, how close together they are. If you've got this scene where everybody in the scene is sighing, we got to figure that out. We got to change it to a different action beat or just remove it entirely if you don't need it. Again, thinking of other action beats, you can use the motion thesaurus or, sorry, those are my lovely editorial assistants. You can use the emotion thesaurus, or you can do the mirror trick or go people watching. Any questions on these mistakes? Okay, now we're going to talk about my absolute all-time favorite tool, free indirect speech. I absolutely love free indirect speech. When I'm editing for my clients, I find myself often rewriting things to be in free indirect speech. Of course, the author can reject, or they can use it as a springboard to write even better free indirect speech than I did, because, you know, I'm not an author. Okay, so first, what it is. Free indirect speech is basically the character's voice and thoughts, but rendered in third person and with their voice, right? So it's not the narrator's voice, but it's in third person. So there's essentially 3 ways we can know what a character is thinking. There's the indirect way, where the narrator just reports some information that we can gather as their thoughts, but doesn't say that it's thoughts. For example, Ray kept forgetting about practice despite feeling awful about it. Okay, that's indirect. There's no quote from Ray. There's no thoughts from Ray, but we know that that's what he was thinking, that he felt awful about it. There's a direct. You can directly report them either through dialogue, they say it out loud, or thoughts. Sorry, I kept forgetting practice. I feel awful, Ray said. Or, crap, I forgot practice. I feel awful. But I bet the guys don't believe me, Ray thought. Right? So, directly reporting their thoughts through either thoughts or words. Free and direct speech now takes away the narrator entirely. The narrator is not indirectly or directly reporting anything. The character's voice takes over. The character becomes the narrator. So like, crap, why did he always forget practice? Of course he felt awful, but doubt the guys believed him. He's thinking this, but I've got the third person, he's still there, and so it's just seamlessly integrated into the narrative. Why you want to use it? It's literally the best of both worlds. You've got first person, which offers depth and intimacy. When we're dealing with first person, when we're reading a first person book, you really get to know that character. You're always in that character's perspective. You're seeing the world through their lens, always. But third person gives you that flexibility of being able to kind of do a further narrative distance and go back to a narrator's voice when needed. So you've got the best of both worlds when you use free and direct speech, because you got the depth and intimacy of first person, because you're using the character as the narrator. But then you have the flexibility to use the narrator as the narrator at times. So you can do that, and you can see these examples of first person, third person with thoughts, and third person with free and direct speech, and how the third person with free and direct speech more closely mimics first person. They declutter, right? They get rid of italics and thought tags. You don't need them because we're not directly reporting their thoughts. The character is saying it in the narration. And thought tags can get in the way, as we know, and so can italics. So ditch the tags and focus on intimacy. Okay, as mentioned, the beauty of free and direct speech is you get that deeper interiority. That's kind of all the buzz in the fiction world. It's been talked about a lot. I feel like editors are constantly writing blogs on it. I've written several. Other editors, I'm seeing their blogs on deep point of view or getting deeper interiority. But it does this because, like I said, you're staying in that third person, but you're accessing the character's viewpoint and voice. You're literally accessing their voice. So we get that deeper interiority. We literally hear the character's voice, but they're not saying it in dialogue form because that would be unnatural. Like some things we think are just not something we'd actually say out loud. Or we think in like fragmented ways, and the word choices we use in our thoughts aren't necessarily the word choices we use when we speak out loud. So we've got their thoughts. The handout shows different interiority from the deepest, widest point, from the widest, most shallow to the deepest, closest, and it's that free and direct speech that takes you there. Okay. Any questions or comments? I'm glad that you guys got to watch my recorded presentation. Please don't hesitate to email me with any further questions or to ask me, like, send me a snippet of your writing and say, hey, did I nail free and direct speech? Or hey, does this beat really work here? And I'm happy to just give you that, you know, quick look over. It's a short little thing. I'm not going to edit your book for free, but if it's just a short little snippet and you just have a question, I'm happy to look over it. So happy writing for 2024.